Welcome back to the Rollup High Roller community. As always, nothing on the Rollup is to be construed as financial advice. We are just some educators in the DeFi space. Toss us a quick like, give us a share, a repost, send it to a friend who may want to watch this, and finally, give us a sub or a follow. It means the world to help support credibly neutral educational content in DeFi. We're here to educate, empower, and enrich you. And let's jump in.
App chains. Why app chains? What is an app chain? RAS, Rollup as a service. Do we even need 1,000 rollups? Many questions to be answered. Today we have Jackson, co-founder of LayerLabs, Asian at OXV, other co-founder of LayerLabs. I would just love to hear from you guys just briefly as we jump in, just like what you guys are building and the problem that you're solving. And then we can dive into some more of the theoretical conversation.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Andy. LayerLabs is really a holistic provider for, founders and projects who wants to build an app chain and go towards an app chain future. And we help connect them to all the partners, for whether it's like cross-chain messaging purposes. They also want to, get the best oracles to have start on their app chain, and also look at any other grants that they can get from, whether it's OP Stack, Arbitrum, Polygon, CDK. That's where we position ourselves and come in. And a lot of that comes from, I guess, my experience having been with Synthetix. We were the first team to build on Optimism, so the layer 2 Rollup, and then this kind of vision that we want to push forward to scale Ethereum is what LayerLabs is kind of working on. I think that's
you're definitely a believer then in the AppChain thesis. Like basically Cosmos started with this horizontal scaling, right? All these different apps. Yeah, there's like 80 chains now. Ethereum decided to have one settlement layer where Ethereum basically ensures the security of all the ERC20s, whereas Cosmos was more of like mesh security where each app chain is secured by its own validator set based on the Tendermint kind of stack. And now it seems like these two ideas are converging where Cosmos is trying to figure out how they can bring all these together in a more seamless fashion, better UX, and have a better mesh security design. And Ethereum is trying to figure out how they can scale all these different applications with app chains. So yeah, man, I'm just curious what you guys' thoughts are on this kind of convergence here of these two ecosystems and how we got here.
Sorry.
I'll take this one. You're seeing a lot of app chains start to deploy on Celestia and all these other things. So for example, the most recent one is Lyra, Manta Network. There's Mode Network coming online soon as well. There's just lots of different applications that are just deploying in order to cater to their own use cases. There's custom use cases. So Lyra is focusing on options. Mode is doing this L2 that's kind of DeFi focused. So you're just seeing lots of different app chains that are looking to launch, as well as the Synthetix app chain, which me and Jackson are working on the proposal for. So it's just interesting to see this narrative of app chains, and not just app chains, but app chains and modularity as well, modular stacks, in order to improve the functionality of the consensus, the execution, and the data availability layer.
Could we double? Go ahead, Jackson.
Well, I was going to just say, when we talk about Cosmos as well, given how they've kind of been shown that app chains, one of the pioneers, I would say, the Cosmos ecosystem. We shouldn't forget that Parachain and Polkadot was also one of the first ones who showed how horizontally scaling was probably one of the ways to go. But I think EVM, having ETH as this kind of security settlement layer, I'm a big believer in Ethereum and the EVM stack. So I think that's why Rollup and ZK EVM is the way to go. Robbie, what was your question?
Yeah, so I'd love to dive deeper into what it means for a project to be an app chain, because there's a lot of like terminology that gets thrown around. And a lot of times I think we refer to some projects either, maybe they're an L2, maybe they're an app chain, maybe they're both. So I'd love to hear from you guys about like what makes an app chain an app chain? Like what are the defining characteristics that take a project that, is maybe like a modular oriented project? And in this world of modularity, like a lot of these projects are kind of like this conglomerate of like modules. So what about that configuration specifically makes a project an app chain?
Right. I think this question is quite interesting. That I think we see app chains from a technical perspective. There's a benefit of having your own block space, higher TPS, transaction finality, ensuring that you're not having to share block space with a lot of other protocols, which, is beyond your protocol's control. And this is more applicable to your AMM, your DEXs, or perps trading DEXs that is very popular right now, because you actually need to ensure that trades, especially during high volatility, you want trades and liquidations to be done in an orderly manner. I think that's where app chains have really kind of shined. Like at the moment, you got 𝗬𝗿𝗬𝗀𝗬𝗀 on V4, and then the beauty of something like app chains on EVM on OP stack, you could actually invite other participants to deploy on yours, on your app chain, to actually have. It's kind of like you don't lose that composability. You can still kind of have shared block space, but you probably don't want everyone else on it. That's not relevant. Like what I guess the point you become a generalized chain is when you start having a bit more things like NFTs, games, all building on the same chain.
Yeah. What's interesting though, Jackson, is like, for example, what we're seeing projects choose to go the app chain route and then slowly go and try to build out more apps on their app chain and then kind of revert back to the general purpose chain route. It's really interesting. Like Avo has launched an OP stack app chain with Celestia for DA for their perps and options. And now they're also trying to build out other DeFi primitives within their own app chain. So it's almost like there's like this desire for the customizability and profitability of the sequencer, changing your DA layer, and also having control over your ecosystem, it seems like, more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, the sequencer profits are a big business case for app chains and protocols. So I think you've actually seen that flywheel, Andy. Did you share it on your Twitter this week, where it's kind of like pretty much everyone starts off as an app chain, then opens up, becomes generalized layer. It's what will happen. But you have, kind of like give or take. You want to still make sure you're not, you only want projects that benefit each other on it, because otherwise you lose. If you have so many people on the chain again, and games and NFTs and all, pretty much any protocol, I think that what happens is you then go back to the same step one. Like you're now have congestion on the sequencer. You have like gas price spiking really high. I think that's a fine balance.
Yeah, I think some of the non-EVM capabilities can solve this problem as well. I was listening to a recent podcast from Empire, and they're saying like, without parallelization and local fee markets within a virtual machine, there's just no way that any EVM rollup, regardless of the DA, is going to be able to scale something like these high throughput blockchains like Say, Aptos, Solana, Sui, etc. So I'm particularly excited in like seeing app chains built off of like the Move VM or SVM or other VMs and kind of moving away from EVM, because I think that in the immediate term, these high throughput blockchains will dominate adoption compared to even rollups. Because like what we saw with Friendtech was like effectively Friendtech was an app chain on base. Like sure, there was like 2 other apps that were getting some traction, but what we saw was immediately the fees on Friendtech were quite high. And so, you know, I'm after listening to that podcast and really thinking about it deeply, like it really doesn't, like the EVM is just, I just don't know if EVM app chains can even scale like something like a non-EVM based app chain with all like a non-EVM based app chain with alternative DA is like, I think it's pretty damn close to something like a Solana. So be interesting to see how these play out and which rollup stack providers and RAS companies offer these, you know, WASM VMs, Move VMs, SVM, Cartesi VM, like RISC-V. Be very interesting to kind of see how this plays out.
Yeah, exactly. I think some of the Solana guys have mentioned that they technically could have Solana app chains, like a fork of Solana, but it comes down to the interoperability. Because I know speaking with the OP team, they've got this super chain where if you're in the super chain stack, you can actually have composability between each other. So that's some of the interesting stuff they're working on, and these are different considerations each team building an app chain would have to consider. But yes, scalability is definitely like Move and like non-EVM or even EVM side, Andy. Like, what do you think of like the guys that are working on the CK EVM and zero knowledge proof rollups? Those would be quite scalable as well.
I don't know. I'm curious what Rob has to say as well, but I think just like ZK, just the proving time and the proving cost is still problematic. It's just like nothing in EVM is comparable, I think, right now to these high throughput blockchains. Obviously, the other conversation is like, oh, they're like way more centralized. But I think ZK gets there eventually.
Yeah. And I think also with the amount of we've seen the numbers as well. Like building app chains is also a very, very selling block space is very, very profitable for a lot of protocols to, if they have a number of transactions and the user base to support pay for the sequencer fee. I think we're going to see everyone might be wanting to build app chains in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, like we've had some numbers on some on like Synthetix, for example, and like using Celestia DA, we were estimating like anywhere from 60 to 70 ETH on profits using LP stack and Celestia DA.
And okay, yeah, that makes sense. The next kind of and I'm just kind of picking and prodding at the AppChain thesis to really try to understand like the bullishness, because I'm quite bullish on it as well, but I just really like to understand like the holes in the thesis, which like the holes in the AppChain and sequencer based profit thesis goes for a lot of these is like, I mean, shared sequencing, decentralized sequencing, but ultimately I don't think Optimism or Arbitrum is going to go in that direction anytime soon.
One thing I'm starting to realize is that it's possible to internalize a lot of the revenue from the sequencers. And I think that's one of the main value, like one of the value propositions of launching your own app chain is going to be to internalize that revenue and kind of like run your own sequencer. And I think it is starting, I think with some of the tools that are coming out, it's possible to internalize that sequencer revenue without launching your own app chain. And then it's like, okay, well, if the only reason you're launching your own app chain is to get the sequencer revenue, that's fine. But like, I think there's got to be more to it, because if you can internalize that without launching your own app chain, then there's no like technical advantage to taking that leap if you can capture the revenue without taking that leap. And I think what I'm starting to realize is that a lot of the value in launching an app chain beyond recouping sequencer costs is going to be like the community benefit. It's like your own ecosystem. And I think there is value in having this like island where if you're on this application and you're on this app chain, like there are no other like intruders. There's no foreigners. There's no, like, it's all about that one application. And I think a lot of that is going to be to build a moat around the community. And a lot of the advantages of launching an app chain are actually off chain. There are a lot of like community driven benefits to launching an app chain and having a siloed community.
Yeah, Robbie, definitely I agree with you there. Like it's not just the only consideration is to internalize the revenue of block space. You know, there's been some suggestions, quite interesting things that we could do even during when we were working on the Synthetix app chain kind of proposal. The idea that came out was, you know, we could actually share, rebate some of these sequencer fees that it's generated by an app chain back to traders, to incentives to the traders. But the powerful thing is now the community you build around that narrative. Like if traders are going to go and trade on Hyperliquid or trade on DYDX, but now if you trade on Synthetix app chain and you get a rebate of the sequencer fees as a trader, that's something that you couldn't do unless I do know, Robbie, some people are looking at fee share with developers. I think there's the EIP 6.8 something, but the people are talking about like fee share with the developers.
Yeah, there's also
Node was doing that, like sequencer fee share.
Yeah, that's where we saw it from.
Yeah, but they're more general purpose. But I think they're going to pioneer. I mean, obviously Blast is doing like this rebase native yield, and then there's going to be like a no gas chain next, and there's going to be like all these different initiatives. But Mode's doing sequencer fee sharing for devs, referral fee sharing for if you refer users to the chain, you earn a percentage of all their fees, and sequencer fee shares, I think, for grants and different things as well. I mean, that's what Optimism does for their retro grants. Robbie, you were saying something there.
Well, I think this is kind of like the idealistic path that we're on, is to eventually redistribute all of the those revenues that are generated by users but being paid to the block builders and the sequencers, and getting like all kind of like accruing at the protocol or the chain level. The utopia that I think we're heading towards is that all of that value ends up flowing to users. Right now, we're kind of in like the dystopian phase where all of it kind of collects at this like generalized, inefficient, bureaucratic like chain level. Eventually,
there's governance. Yeah, then you have to do this whole even the retrospective grants is a very cumbersome process at the moment. You know, we kind of currently see with, you know, the OP, and I think the giving back to users of a chain is a utopia. It'll be great. It's something that we could really get behind.
Yeah, and I think Cosmos and its horizontal scaling model is probably in the best position to capitalize on the redistribution of sequencer fees to the end users. And the reason being is that they're already, or the Cosmos ecosystem is already organized in such a configuration that you can see where all of these transactions and all of these orders are coming from. And so I think it's the easiest model to redistribute to those chains, because they're already broken into these pieces. And so you don't really need to like hash out or dig too deep to figure out where the order flow is coming from. Cosmos is oriented in a way that it's all kind of like already modular, to kind of like reuse that word. And as a result of that, like that whole model getting blown out, it makes sense to just kind of like keep that revenue internalized in its own chain. And then it makes it much, much easier to redistribute that to the end users. Monolithic chains are in a much tougher position to reallocate because all of the orders, all of the transactions get pooled in like a single mempool, and then it's very chaotic, right? So the transaction originates in the user's wallet. It ends up getting mixed up with all of the other users from all of the other applications in this one giant mempool. To redistribute that revenue from all of those transactions, it means like think about it like it's like a tangled up pair of headphones, and you got to untangle like all of those transactions from all of those applications. Whereas the applications in like a Cosmos model are just threaded, like they're all like neatly untangled already in their own lanes.
Is that more bullish for Cosmos?
Dude, it's mostly just an observation. I think it's I think it's bullish for Cosmos users because it's going to be easier to allocate sequencer revenues to those Cosmos users than the users of a monolithic chain. But it's not to say that like it's not possible to distribute revenues to the end users of a monolithic chain. I think it'll just be easier in Cosmos, and probably as a result of it being easier, happen sooner.
Interesting. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. We would love to actually Asian here is quite close. He actually works quite closely with the Cosmos ecosystem as well. I personally am an advisor for Eclipse Finance, who is a launchpad on Cosmos ecosystem, and that's something that I think in the EVM space we could keep an eye out on and actually learn from how app chains are done in the Cosmos ecosystem.
Yeah, this is an interesting point actually, because on some app chains such as like Thorchain and Maya and Chainflip that are Cosmos SDK based, you can actually in their models you can split like all of the fees between like nodes who are validating the network and also like the liquidity providers who are providing assets to the network. And as like there are, for example, more validators than LPs, or there's more LPs than validators, like the incentive can actually swing. So let's say, right now it's 50-50 because the network is in equilibrium, but let's say there's too many people bonding in like a validator. We need to incentivize more LPs. Like most of the rewards will shift over to LPs to incentivize more people to provide liquidity. So you can, these things are actually already live on Cosmos, like on those 3 chains I mentioned. But yeah, it's the trade-off I find that is that bootstrapping that sort of like validator set is very capital intensive, but also very hard from a like decentralization standpoint, especially when you're first starting them. When there aren't that many validators, it's easier to attack the network, of course. But yeah, that's I guess some of the trade-offs for the Cosmos stack is that like just generally it's more technically harder to maintain and like bootstrap from nothing.
Yeah. And as the rollup centric roadmap plays out on Ethereum, it tends to converge to this Cosmos model where things are like more modular. There's more rollups and there's more of these ecosystems, and it tends to resemble the Cosmos ecosystem, but not the Cosmos like consensus mechanisms, because all of these rollups end up sharing the security principles of Ethereum and the validator network of Ethereum, whereas the Cosmos settlement inherits the security practices of like all of these fragmented validator sets. And Andy made this point in an earlier conversation, I think earlier this week, about how it'll become very, very easy to inherit these security principles by launching like an AVS on EigenLayer. And then those app chains will essentially automatically like inherit the very, very high cost of corruption and the very, very like robust security model of Ethereum.
Interesting. I kind of want to take you guys on a practical level of where you guys fit into this For those who have kind of listened through this, how are you guys looking to position yourselves with LayerLabs and help teams? Kind of what is the process of working with you guys? And how can people kind of reach out and find you?
Yeah, great, Andy. Yeah, so with working out with LayerLabs, you could reach out to us on Twitter, also through Telegram, and also we really want to work with founders who are ready to start looking at building out an app chain, and we can actually explore more than just the technical side. So we've got some of the best partners, we're partnering with AltLayer, and also with Caldera, 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵. We also can then build out a holistic plan for the specifics of the app chain. So whether you're a perp stacks or you want to be a GameFi project, similar to like 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵 or GameStore, we can custom design pretty much what's the best for their needs. So, and then also a kind of like a token strategy. So like, how do you launch? What's the go-to-market plan? And we work with like some of the best marketing, Web3 marketing agencies or their dev teams to actually help them bring that to fruition, to see it, to actually go from not just concept, not just proposal, but we'll, be able to help them actually be there while the chain goes live. I think that's the difference. We're not like your big four tech consultants who will write you a proposal and here's a proposal, walk away. We're a lot more hands-on.
Yeah, and I mean, really, it's kind of like the non-tangibles, right? A lot of these RaaS, Rollup as a service providers, tend to bring on the technical side and really do a good job with deployments. But when it comes to everything else, a lot of teams can kind of struggle with the ins and outs of building a community, and grants and all these things, and these can kind of make or break the entire operation. So very, very important. Yeah, I mean, any closing thoughts from you guys as we kind of come to a close? I mean, happy to keep the conversation rolling. But I mean, is there anything pressing that you guys would like to kind of touch on or make a clear point, or happy to explore?
Yeah, we're actually looking at more opportunities as well to how to actually, people who are like researchers. We want more people to join our community, especially to share more information about, what's the best DA, what's happening. There's stuff happening at EigenLayer at the moment, 𝗰𝗍. So we're looking for more researchers, people to write articles. Also, like the Rollup, Andy, what you're doing is great. Love how you guys are also sharing the Rollup thesis, appchains. So yeah, there's also any kind of development work that we're looking at the moment, like dashboards, tooling that can really help people to build their own app chain or kind of make the jump. Yeah, so kind of like 𝗷𝗶𝗵𝗵, I really love what they do there as well. How you can see everything, all the volume and TVL or L2 ecosystem. Yeah, I think that's another area that LayerLabs will be looking at doing as well. Just developing out the dashboards and tooling.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time and for coming on and kind of talking about app chains and some theses. And yeah, excited to kind of push this out there and see what the community has to think. I think this will hit on some people who are in the trenches thinking about this stuff, builders, and hope that we can make an impact and kind of help some early stage builders really come to make some better choices with regards to the community and broader off-chain and some on-chain things. So yeah, thank you guys, and look forward to seeing the success with LayerLabs and the Appchain Thesis in 2024 and onwards.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you very much, Andy, Robbie. Appreciate it.